The rain lashed against her skin, soaking her trembling body as she knelt before the hospital doors. Her fingers clutched her swollen belly, desperate to protect the fragile life inside her. But the pain in her body was nothing compared to the agony in her heart, just a few feet away. Her husband stood with his arm wrapped around her best friend, the woman she had trusted more than anyone. "You were just a stepping stone," he said, his voice cold, his eyes empty of love. "She's the one I've always wanted." Her best friend smirked, tilting her head onto his shoulder, as if she had won some grand prize. The world spun around her, her heart hammering, her lungs refusing to breathe. A sharp pain shot through her stomach. And before she could cry out, a blinding pair of headlights cut through the darkness, racing toward her. Tires screeched, metal crunched. Pain exploded through her body as she was thrown into the air, landing hard against the pavement. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth, her limbs weak, her vision dimming. The last thing she saw was their backs, walking away, their laughter mingling with the storm. No remorse, no hesitation, no second glance. Her baby, her innocent, unborn baby, was slipping away. A single tear slid down her cheek as the world faded to black. Silence, cold, endless emptiness. Then, gasping breath, frantic heartbeat, air rushing into her lungs. Her body jolted awake, her fingers clutching soft fabric. Not pavement, not blood, a bed. She sat up, her chest rising and falling in panicked breaths as her wide eyes scanned the room. Her childhood bedroom, the same old wallpaper, the tiny desk where she once dreamed of a bright future. She scrambled to her feet, her legs shaky as she turned to the mirror, and there she was, 5 years younger. She staggered back, her hands flying to her face. The scars, the pain, the swollen belly, all gone. Her skin was smooth, her body unmarked, her eyes still filled with the innocence that hadn't yet been stolen. Her heart pounded as realization crashed over her. She had come back. Somehow, she had been reborn before the betrayal, before the heartbreak, before they destroyed her. Fate had handed her a second chance, and she wasn't about to waste it. Memories surged through her mind like a flood, each one sharper than the last. The whispered lies, the stolen glances between them, the way they had manipulated her into thinking she was loved. Her stomach twisted with rage. But this time, she didn't cry. No, this time, she smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. If they thought she would walk the same path, make the same mistakes, and blindly love them again, they were dead wrong. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as a plan formed in her mind. She wouldn't just walk away. No, that was too easy. They had ripped her heart apart, taken everything from her. And now she would make them pay. She would take everything they cherished, everything they had stolen, and leave them begging for mercy, but she would give them none. Her first move had to be perfect. If she changed too much, too quickly, they would notice. She had to be careful, play the long game, make them think she was still the same weak, naive girl, let them believe they still had control, and then strike when they least expected it. Her lips curled upward, her heart no longer burdened by love or loyalty. This time, she would be the one holding the knife. She sat on the edge of her bed, running through every memory, every detail she could use against them. Her husband, no, her ex, was obsessed with control. He needed her to be weak, dependent, desperate for his love. Her so-called best friend thrived on attention, willing to do anything to feel superior. It was pathetic how blind she had been, how easily she had trusted them. But not this time. The door creaked open, and she turned to see him, her future betrayer, the man who had once made her heart race. Now, all she felt was disgust. "You're awake," he said, stepping inside, his voice filled with fake concern. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable, and whispered the first lie of her new life. "Yes, and I had the strangest dream." He stepped closer, his brows furrowed in fake concern, the same expression she used to find comforting. "A dream?" he asked, tilting his head, his voice laced with curiosity. She forced a soft smile, playing the part of the clueless girl she used to be. "Yes, it felt so real, as if I lived another life, but it was just a nightmare." Her fingers trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the effort of holding back her rage. He cupped her cheek, his touch once intoxicating, now repulsive. "You're safe now," he whispered, pretending to care. She almost laughed. Safe? With him? He was the very reason she had died. The monster who had destroyed her without hesitation. But she kept her expression soft, nodding slowly. "Yes, I am." Her lips curled into a smile, so convincing that he bought the lie instantly. He had no idea that the woman before him was no longer his obedient little doll. "Get some rest," he murmured, brushing a kiss against her forehead. She barely resisted the urge to shove him away. Instead, she let him walk out of the room, let him believe he still had power over her. The moment the door clicked shut, she exhaled sharply, her mask slipping for just a second. Hatred burned in her chest, a wildfire that could never be extinguished. She had spent her past life waiting for love, hoping for loyalty, but not anymore. She glanced at the clock. 4 years and 11 months until her betrayal. It seemed like plenty of time, but she knew better. The deception had already started. Somewhere in this very moment, her so-called best friend was already sinking her claws into him, weaving her web of lies. But this time, she wouldn't sit by and watch them destroy her. No, she would be the one pulling the strings. She would make sure they suffered, just like she had. Her first step was simple. Distance. The more she clung to him, the easier it was for him to manipulate her. In her past life, she had been so desperate to prove her love, to be the perfect wife. She had cooked for him, sacrificed her dreams for him, allowed him to shape her into someone small and dependent. That was the first mistake she would never repeat. This time, she would be untouchable. The next morning, she acted exactly as she used to. Soft, sweet, gentle. But when he leaned in for a kiss, she turned her face away. "I'm feeling a little off today," she said, feigning innocence. He frowned, but nodded, brushing it off as nothing. If only he knew this was just the beginning. Step by step, she would slip from his grasp until he had no control over her. And by the time he realized, it would be too late. Days passed, and she played her role flawlessly. She still smiled, still laughed at his jokes, but she never let him too close. She started making small changes, ones he wouldn't notice right away. She stopped answering his texts immediately. She spent less time clinging to his side. She reconnected with old friends, people he had made her cut off before. Bit by bit, she was rebuilding the life he had stolen from her. But her biggest move was yet to come. In her past life, she had sacrificed everything for him, even giving up a promising business opportunity just to be the perfect wife. This time, she wouldn't make that mistake. She pulled out her laptop, her fingers trembling with excitement, as she typed the first steps of her new plan, a business, one that would grow beyond his reach, one that would one day crush him completely. As she mapped out her future, her phone buzzed, a message from her best friend, the woman who would soon betray her. "Let's meet up today. I miss you," she scoffed, her fingers tightening around the device. Miss her? The same woman who had stabbed her in the back. The same woman who had taken everything from her. But she forced a smile, her fingers typing out a sweet reply. "Of course. Let's catch up." She wasn't meeting her to reconnect. No, this was the beginning of her next step. She would look into those familiar eyes, listen to those fake words, and pretend she was still clueless. And while her so-called best friend thought she was weaving another web of lies, she wouldn't realize that this time she was the one walking into a trap. She sat across from her, sipping her coffee, with a practiced smile. Her best friend, no, her enemy, chatted away, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You've been so distant lately," she pouted, tilting her head in mock concern. "Is everything okay?" If she had asked this question in her past life, she would have believed the worry was genuine. But now, she saw the cracks in the facade, the flicker of something darker behind those innocent eyes. "I've just been busy," she replied smoothly, stirring her drink, thinking about the future. "My career." The other woman blinked, clearly surprised. In her past life, she had never spoken of ambitions because she had none. She had been too wrapped up in love, too focused on pleasing a man who would never cherish her. But this time, she had a purpose, and it wasn't love, it was power. Her best friend forced a smile, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her discomfort. "That's great," she said, voice light, but her fingers gripped her cup too tightly. "I just didn't think you were the type to be so ambitious." It was an insult disguised as a compliment, a subtle jab, meant to remind her of her place, the place they had all forced her into, small, dependent, weak. But she only smiled, tilting her head as if she didn't hear the condescension. "I guess people change," she said simply, her voice calm, unreadable. The woman across from her hesitated for a fraction of a second, then leaned in. She began, voice soft, fake concern dripping from her tone. "You don't need to stress yourself out with work. He will take care of you." Her stomach twisted, but she didn't let it show. That was exactly what they had wanted, wasn't it? To make her believe she was nothing without him, to make her feel grateful for his crumbs of affection. But she had seen the future. She knew where this path led, her hands trembling, begging him to stay, her heart breaking as he walked away. "No, never again." "I know," she said sweetly, lying through her teeth, "but it never hurts to have options, right?" Her best friend's lips twitched, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "Of course," she said, but there was an edge to her voice, a sign that the first crack had formed. She let the conversation drift to meaningless gossip, pretending to be invested in stories that no longer mattered. But beneath her calm exterior, she was watching, calculating, every flicker of doubt in her so-called friend's eyes, every micro-expression that betrayed her real thoughts. This woman had stolen everything from her once, and now she was watching her slowly realize this time things were different. This time she wasn't the fool. As they parted ways, her best friend hugged her tightly. "I'm so glad we're still close," she whispered, voice honeyed and deceitful. She hugged her back, gripping just a little tighter. lowering her voice to a whisper. Me too. It was a promise and a warning wrapped in one. She could feel the woman stiffen, slightly, before pulling away, with a nervous laugh. Oh, she felt it, the shift in power, and this was just the beginning. That night, she stared at her reflection, her eyes filled with something unfamiliar. Strength, control, a fire that had once been dimmed, but was now burning brighter than ever. The old her would have been tangled in love, in devotion, in blind trust, but this version of her, she was no longer a woman waiting to be chosen. She was the one choosing. And she chose vengeance. She chose to rise from the ashes they had burned her in. She picked up her phone, scrolling through old memories, old conversations. The lies had been there all along. She had just refused to see them. The stolen glances, the quiet betrayals, the way they had slowly broken her down without her realizing. This time, she would catch them before they could even start. This time, she would take control of the game before they even knew they were playing. And when the time came, she would watch them fall. Morning arrived with a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was planning, building, preparing. The next steps were already forming in her mind. Soon, the empire they had built on her pain would crumble. Soon, they would be the ones left broken. She smiled as she stepped outside, the sun warming her skin. Today was just another day to them. But to her, it was the first day of their end. She walked through the city streets, each step steady, each breath controlled. The world looked the same, but she wasn't the same woman who had once wandered these roads with naive dreams. Every familiar place was now a reminder of betrayal, a warning of what had been taken from her. But this time, she wouldn't be the one left behind. This time, she would be the one rewriting the story. Her first real move needed precision, patience. She wouldn't lash out recklessly. That was how the weak sought revenge. No, she would carve her revenge slowly, carefully, until they didn't even realize they were walking into their downfall. And the first step, taking away their power, making sure that, when the moment came, they had nothing left to fight back with. She started with her finances, cutting off the allowances she had foolishly given him before. In her past life, she had trusted him so blindly that she had let him control everything, her accounts, her investments, even the property in her name. Never again. She liquidated assets, secured her funds, and quietly moved them into places he would never find. It was time for her to have control. The next step was her image. In her past life, she had always dressed the way he liked, soft, delicate, innocent, a woman meant to be protected, dependent. That image had made it easier for them to see her as weak, as something they could break without consequence. But she wasn't that woman anymore. She bought new clothes, sharp cuts, bolder colors, a woman who didn't need saving, because she was the storm. She made her presence known, re-establishing old connections she had been forced to abandon. She attended events, shook hands with influential people, made sure her name started circulating in places they never expected her to be. Every step was calculated, every move designed to place her higher while pushing them lower. And the best part, they still had no idea what was coming. Then came the cracks in their perfect little world. She saw it in his eyes when he reached for her and found nothing, no affection, no devotion, no blind love, just distance, polite and cold. He frowned, confused, unsettled. "You've been acting different," he muttered, trying to pin her down again, trying to reclaim the control he had once wielded so easily. She only smiled, tilting her head. "Have I?" she asked, her voice laced with quiet amusement. His frustration grew. Little by little, the man who had once been so confident, so assured of her loyalty, was now watching her slip away, without understanding why. And then came the panic, the desperation. He started calling more, texting more, finding excuses to be near her, but it was too late. The more he chased, the further she pulled away. The more he reached, the less he found, and it was driving him insane. But the real masterpiece was her best friend, the woman who had played the role of a sister while stealing everything from her. She was still playing her game, still believing she was in control. But the first signs of doubt were forming in her eyes. The way she glanced at him, the way she tried to gauge his attention. She had thought this would be easy. Just like last time, she had no idea that the script had changed. "You seem so different lately," her best friend mused, twirling a strand of hair between her fingers. "More independent." She smiled, setting down her glass of wine, leaning forward slightly. "Do I?" she murmured, mirroring her tone, her gaze sharp, unwavering. For the first time, she saw the flicker of unease in the other woman's eyes. "Yes," she thought, watching her carefully, "be afraid. You should be afraid." Because this was only the beginning. The cracks in their perfect illusion were forming, spreading. Soon, the foundation of lies they had built their happiness on would collapse. And when it did, she would be standing above the ruins, watching them fall, watching them suffer, watching them finally understand what it meant to lose everything, just as they had once done to her. The days passed, and she continued to play her role with careful precision. She let them believe she was still the same, just a little distant, just a little distracted. But behind the scenes, she was laying down the final pieces of her masterpiece. The moment of their downfall was approaching, and she wanted them to feel every second of it. His frustration was turning into paranoia. She could see it in the way he watched her, the way his eyes flickered with suspicion every time she smiled at someone else. He was starting to sense it, that she was slipping through his fingers, that the woman he had once controlled so easily was no longer his to manipulate. And the fear in his eyes, it was delicious. Then came the first real crack, a rumor whispered in hushed tones, carefully planted where she knew it would reach the right ears. A business deal gone wrong. A small financial loss that seemed insignificant at first, but she knew the truth. It was only the beginning of his empire crumbling, one piece at a time. And the best part? He had no idea she was behind it. Her best friend was growing restless too. She was used to winning, to having everything fall into place without effort. But now, something was off. The man she had stolen wasn't as devoted, wasn't as present. He was distracted, chasing something he didn't understand. And deep down, she must have felt it. Things weren't going the way they were supposed to. Then came the breaking point. Another whisper, another perfectly placed lie. This time, aimed at the woman who had betrayed her. A carefully manipulated situation that made it seem like she wasn't as loyal as she claimed to be. A seed of doubt planted in his mind, watered by his growing insecurity. And just like that, the cracks between them widened. The fights started small, little arguments, fleeting moments of tension, but soon they grew, turning into full-blown battles. She watched from the sidelines, silent and patient, letting them tear each other apart. He was starting to suspect, starting to question, And the woman who had once been his greatest prize was now nothing but a source of frustration. "She's using you," she whispered one night, her voice barely above a murmur. He flinched, his eyes searching hers for answers, for clarity, but she only smiled, tilting her head, like she knew something he didn't, and that was enough. Enough to plant the final seed, to push him closer to the edge. Soon, he would lose everything, and he would have no one to blame but himself. His downfall came faster than even she had expected, a failed investment, a scandal that shook his reputation. One by one, his allies abandoned him, his wealth slipping through his fingers like sand. And when he turned to the woman he had left her for, seeking comfort, seeking support, she was already gone, off to someone more powerful, someone more useful, just as she had once done to her. He came to her doorstep one night, drenched in rain, eyes hollow with desperation. "I made a mistake," he choked out, reaching for her like she was his last hope. Once she would have welcomed him with open arms, forgiven him without question, but now, she only stared down at him, her expression unreadable, her heart ice cold. "Yes, you did," she said softly, stepping back. And then she closed the door. The next morning, she walked into her new office, her name shining on the glass doors. She had built this, her success, her power, her new life, and as she looked out at the city skyline, she felt nothing but satisfaction. He was nothing now, just a forgotten mistake, a cautionary tale. And her, she was untouchable. The woman they had tried to break had risen, and she would never fall again.